Charles Lucky Luciano, the number one gangster of all times. Intelligent, ruthless, and a visionary. Born Salvador Luciane. With Little Caesar's blessings, Luciano took over Joe the Boss's gang and became Little Caesar's lieutenant, ending the war. With Joe the Boss gone, Little Caesar reorganized the Italian-American gangs in New York into 5 families, headed by Luciano, Profassi, Galeno, Mangano, and himself. Little Caesar called a meeting of crime bosses in New York where he declared himself boss of all bosses. Little Caesar also whittled down the rival family's rackets in favor of his own. Luciano appeared to accept these changes, but was merely biding his time before removing Little Caesar. Although Little Caesar was slightly more forward-thinking than Joe the Boss, Luciano had come to believe that he was even greedier and more high-bound than Joe the Boss had been. By September 1931, Little Caesar realized Luciano was a threat and hired Vincent Coyle, an Irish gangster, to kill him. However, Lucchese alerted Luciano that he was marked for death. On September the 10th, Little Caesars ordered Luciano, Givenchy, and Costello to come to his office at the Hemsley building in Manhattan. Convinced that Little Caesar's planned to murder them, Luciano decided to act first. He sent to Little Caesar's office Lucchese, Three-Finger Brown, and 4 Jewish gangsters, secured with the aid of Lansky and Siegel, whose faces were unknown to Little Caesar's people. Disguised as government agents, 2 of the gangsters disarmed Little Caesar's bodyguards, and Three-Finger Brown identified Little Caesar's to the other 2 gangsters, who proceeded to stab the boss multiple times before shooting him. This assassination was the first of what would later be fabled as the Night of Siciliano's Vespers. Several days later, on September the 13th, the corpse of 2 Little Caesar's allies, Samuel and Luis, were retrieved from Newark Bay, showing evidence of torture. Meanwhile, Joseph, the leader of the Pittsburgh crime family, was shot to death in his home. The October 15th disappearance of Joe, head of the Los Angeles crime family, would later be regarded as part of this alleged plan to quickly eliminate the Mustache Pete's, the ideal of an organized mass purge directed by none other than Luciano. With the death of Little Caesar, Luciano became the dominant crime boss in the United States. He had reached the pinnacles of the underworld, setting policies and directing activities along with the other mafia bosses. His own crime family controlled lucrative criminal rackets in New York City, such as illegal gambling, extortion, bookmaking, loan sharking, and drug trafficking, in which he did business with the Godfather of Harlem, Bumpy Johnson, as well as Red Dillard. He became very influential in the labor union activities and controlled the Manhattan waterfront, garbage hauling, construction, garment district, businesses, and trucking. Although there would have been few objections Had Luciano declared himself the bosses of all bosses, he chose to abolish the title, believing the position created trouble between the families, made himself a target for another ambitious challenger. Instead, Luciano chose to quietly maintain control by forging unofficial alliances with other bosses. At the same time, Luciano did not discard all of Little Caesar's changes, as he believed that the ceremony of becoming a made man in a crime family was ludicrous. But the convincees persuaded Luciano to keep the ceremony, arguing that young people needed rituals to promote obedience to the family. Luciano remained committed to the oath of silence to protect the families from legal prosecution. In addition, he kept Little Caesar's structure of 5 crime families in New York. Luciano elevated most trusted Italian associates to high-level positions in what was now the Luciano crime family. Vito became underboss, and Costello a concierge. Adonis and Trigger Mike and Tony Bender, Willie Moore, and Little Oogie all served as capos. Because Lansky and Siegel were non-Italians, neither man could hold official positions within any mafia family. However, Lansky was a top advisor to Luciano, and Siegel a trusted associate. Later in 1931, Luciano called a meeting in Chicago with various bosses, where he proposed a commission to serve as the governing body for organized crime, designed to settle all disputes and decide which families controlled which territories. The commission has been called Luciano's greatest innovation. His goal with the commission were to quietly maintain his own power over all the families and to prevent further gang wars. The bosses approved of the ideal and the commission was formed.